I grew up in New Zealand, so I was a student at university in Wellington. I was 19 years old, 1975, and I'd had some. Undergone a sort of big transformation. Beginning of that year, I was an atheist, and then I had some really intense spiritual experiences, and I became very interested in mysticism and meditation and the mind, and I was no longer an atheist. So I had tried a few other kinds of meditation. Uh, and I, read a lot of books. The first one I read was called The Varieties of Religious Experience, which was fantastic because it helped me to understand what was happening to me and that it wasn't unusual. Actually, it was a thing that happened to many different people over in different cultures, and so I really wanted to go deeply into meditation. And I read books on Zen, tried to meditate with Zen meditation, just learning from a book, and then I read Yogananda's autobiography, and that was incredibly inspiring for me. And I tried to meditate sort of. It doesn't exactly instruct you how to meditate, but it gives you some idea. But then I realized that I actually went on a retreat by myself for 3 days because I realized I'd never spent a day alone. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be a yogi or something, I better get used to spending days on my own. So I went off to this place by the beach, nice spot, and by the first evening, I realized I was feeling lonely, and I thought, I'm going to be a pretty useless yogi if I can't do better than this. So I took a determination, and I decided to sit in meditation until I felt better. And I sat for about an hour, and sure enough, I found I was feeling really good, and I felt some kind of presence, spiritual presence or something, and but I realized from that I needed a teacher because I didn't know what on earth I was doing. So then I started looking and I learned transcendental meditation. And that was okay. It was quite good. I liked it. I practiced that only a couple of weeks when I was at a friend's house and some visitors came. One of them's name was Haridev and the other's name was Radha. So you know them both. And they were the first Margis that I met. And they were actually, I think Haridev is a second cousin of my friend's parents or something. So we got talking, and it turns out the Ananda Marga Jagrati is next door to my friend's house. So they invited me for what they call open spiritual conference in those days. And I went there and I met Dada Nabhaniilananda. And he told me a lot of really fantastic things. He told me about Prout and all kind of inspiring things. I learned that Bawa was in jail, and actually I thought that wasn't bad. I thought if he's in jail, he must have done something good, because I was very much against the status quo and all these, I didn't like politicians and the governments, and so I was a bit of a, radical, I guess. And he gave me a copy of Guide to Human Conduct and said, go home and read this and come back tomorrow. So I did that, and I loved the book. I thought, wow, this is amazing. This guru is telling me how to live my life. This is what I need. And the next day I came back, and there were 3 acharyas there, and one of them was Dada Kashyap. He was Italian, and he initiated me. And I stayed at the Jagrati for 5 hours, and the LFTs there taught me the entire 16 points, and that was my introduction to Ananda Marga. And I loved everything except kirtan.
That's ironic for you.
A little bit, yeah.
Can you, before you go any further, you said
Yeah.
at the beginning you had some sort of spiritual awakening in your spiritual experience. Is there anything specific you can say, or is it a more subjective thing?
Well, I can be quite specific. Should I include the substance involved?
Yeah.
Okay. So, uh, in that at that point in New Zealand kind of youth culture, everybody I knew smoked marijuana pretty regularly. Except one friend. I had one friend who said he was a Buddhist, and that's why he didn't smoke marijuana, and that got me a bit curious. I had another friend who was a fairly serious hippie, and he finally talked three of us into taking some LSD. So we did that, and that was a very eye-opening experience. It felt like the sort of 10 or 12 hours when we were high on LSD. It felt like longer than the rest of my entire life. So that was interesting, and it was very positive experience. But after that, that made me very curious about what's inside me, what's within my mind, and because it felt like it was triggering something that was to some degree already there. It wasn't that we were hallucinating. It wasn't. We didn't take very much. We took like a quarter of a dose or something, but it was tremendously powerful. Then about a month later, we did the same thing again. And it was a similar, beautiful experience, but in the evening, when it had more or less worn off, something different happened. I found myself sitting, I was at my brother's house in Wellington. I found myself sitting in a room by myself, and just this feeling started inside me. It was like a sense of joy, and kind of centered on the heart, and it was getting stronger and stronger. And I didn't know what was happening, but I thought, oh, the effect of this drug might be coming back again or something. But it became so intense. I was just sitting there and weeping with joy, and suddenly a force took hold of me, or took control of my body, and I said some words in a language I didn't understand, and I felt like a bolt of lightning shoot up my spine to the crown of my head, and I saw this vision of light. It was like the sun was right in front of me, and it was an entity, and it was emanating limitless love, and it was incredibly blissful, and definitely the most overwhelming experience I'd ever had. And then there's a memory gap. So a little while later, I found myself lying down in the next room, feeling just kind of waves of bliss. But I understood that I had received a set of instructions from a guru in India, and I didn't know who it was. But the first instruction was that I should never take drugs again. The second one was that I should learn meditation. The third was that the purpose of life is to realize God, to realize oneness with infinite love, and that's what all of the different religions and spiritual paths are about. And the fourth, that was the third, yeah, and the fourth was that this guru had a mission to save the world, and that I had to play a role in that. So I got my instructions, and I've been trying to follow them ever since.
So you got initiated by Dada Nabhaniilananda. How was that, by the way? Did you feel anything strong after that, or
So the Dada Kashyap taught me first lesson straight away. He gave me the option of Nama Mantra or Ishta Mantra in first lesson. But he said, if you get the first lesson, you have to follow sattvic diet straight away. You have to give up onions and garlic and mushrooms and meat and alcohol and marijuana. I said, no problem, because I didn't like meat or onions or garlic my whole life. I disliked them intensely, especially onions. Okay, I was still a little attached to, I'd already given up alcohol. I was a little attached to smoking marijuana, but I thought, well, I knew I was going to have to give it up anyway, so let's go for it. So he gave me first lesson, and he was very inspiring, and he was quite intense. So we were meditating together for 30 minutes after he'd given me the lesson, and it was physically kind of painful because I wasn't used to sitting for that long, and the experience wasn't particularly intense, but it just felt powerful. As I said, I'd been doing transcendental meditation for a few weeks, and this felt like, okay, that was the sort of broken down old 20-year-old Hyundai. I just got a new Ferrari. there was a huge difference, both qualitatively and in terms of just sense of power from between the techniques. Yeah, so it wasn't like a just trying to think what I felt like. It wasn't a big sort of Kundalini awakening experience, but it just definitely felt that this method is is what I've been looking for.
Yeah. And so after that, after some time, you decided to become an LFT, is that right?
Yeah, well, I was very I jumped right in, right? So I was doing sadhana twice a day, meditating half an hour morning and night. Then after 2 weeks, I loved it. I thought this meditation is great. I want more. So I asked Dada to give me a second lesson, and he said, well, on one condition, you have to increase your meditation to 2 hours a day, so an hour in the morning and an hour at night. So I said, okay. And as you might expect, this intensified my meditation. It was wonderful, but my life also began to change very quickly. And it was like everything except my meditation was falling apart. And, and
Welcome to Ananda Marga.
yeah, it was all very intense right from day one. And then we went on a retreat, my first retreat, and that was where I learned to love kirtan because Radha was leading the kirtans, and she's a fantastic musician and singer. And then after that, I loved kirtan. Anybody like three, four of my brother, three of my friends got initiated. I think I was pretty openly fanatical. Somebody came to our door doing a survey, and they ended up getting initiated. um, and I part of me knew that I was going to have to leave everything, my family, my friends, my country, my university. Then my just the circumstances around me just it all began to collapse. My friend decided to move out of the apartment we were sharing, and it was because I was a Magi, and there were three of us. I was a Magi, of course. My one of them got initiated, and he was really into it. The third one didn't, and he wasn't comfortable living with these two and suddenly become yogis. So then I had nowhere to live because we couldn't afford to keep it. So I moved into the Jagrati, even though I didn't really want to, because I knew it was going to be kind of a little bit more discipline than I was quite ready for. But and that this was 3 months after I was initiated, 2.5 months. And then it got to the point where I just wanted to leave the country because I thought, let's get this over with. So I went to in December, on December the 11th, 1975. I flew to Australia to go to LFT training.
How's that?
And I wasn't sure. Well, it was. I loved the satsang. I loved being in this environment with, just we're all doing kirtan meditation together. We're all doing this routine together. It was fantastic. I was super inspired learning more about the philosophy from our trainer. It was hard. It was very intense, but and I was, missing New Zealand and my friends. So I was a little bit torn, but I have happy memories of it because it was this big journey of discovery that I'd embarked on, and it was real. It was this was kind of making it real. And I had thoughts of going back to New Zealand, but I never did. Well, I visited a couple of times, but you know, I'd actually been thinking about becoming a Zen Buddhist monk before I was initiated in Ananda Marga. But I hadn't thought of it as a lifelong thing. I thought I'll go and live in a Zen monastery for a couple of months, or maybe a year or two even, and get enlightened and come and go home. So that was my plan. But this it didn't quite work like that. So I remained an LFT in Australia and of course we spent quite a bit of time together then, you and I. Um, I was posted in various parts of Australia over the next 3.5 years, and learning more, going through a lot of intense personal changes and development. But it was full of spiritual inspiration and clash.
So much so that you ended up going to whole timer training some years later.
That's right. And I hadn't met Baba yet. So by 1979, I felt ready to go into Acharya training. In fact, I had a lot of doubt whether it wasn't whether I should do it, it was whether I could. I felt that Baba wanted me to do this, but I was not sure whether it was something I could handle.
What is the most challenging part of being the whole time?
Not having a family.
All right.
Yeah. Um, I also had some lingering. I had this fantasy from my teenage years of wanting to be some sort of rock star or something unwise, and so I thought, but I had some really interesting lessons. For example, I remember one time I was going through I went through this sort of yes, I'm going to do this, and then maybe I won't, like several times. And one time I remember waking up one morning, I decided, yes, I'm going to be an acharya. I woke up one morning, I thought, no, maybe I should be a professional musician after all. That day, this was in Adelaide, that day somebody gave me a really nice guitar. Another person gave me a violin, and somebody else offered me free access to a recording studio, which was like really unusual in those days. And it was like, the way that a lot of people might have read that is, okay, Providence or God or Parampurusha wants you to, go ahead and be a musician. But and that's what it looked like. But then when Dada came, Bodhisattva, you remember him?
Yeah.
He came, I kind of looked up to him. I thought he was wonderful. And he came there and I told him what I was thinking. And he said, I remember this very clearly. He said, look, you have to make this decision yourself. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But I just have one question for you. Which does the world need more? More musicians or one more acharya? and, and there was part of me that wanted to say musicians, but it sounded so absolutely absurd. I couldn't get it out. It was too ridiculous. So I kind of surrendered again. And I went through stuff like that several times. I gave away the guitar. What did I do? I think I kept the guitar, I sold the violin, and I never used the recording studio.
Eventually you did go. Where did you do your training?
Kathmandu.
And what was that like? Describe what it was like.
Well, getting there was the most interesting part because I still hadn't met Baba. So do you want this, if you want this sequentially, first thing I did was go to India and meet Baba. So I was super excited. I'd been waiting to meet my guru for 3.5 years, and I'd had dreams of Baba, and I really felt that he was, there was no doubt in my mind that he was my guru and who he is who I believe him to be, this Taraka Brahma, etc. So I went to Calcutta with some of our friends, with Jayanta and then Didi Chinmay and Nitya Priya, who was another LFT, and we were going to Acharya training together. So we landed in Calcutta in May, which is really hot. And we were really tired because we had to travel through Kathmandu because one of us was blacklisted, probably maybe Jayanta or Didi. And so we couldn't go straight into India. So we all came to Kathmandu and caught the bus, and got to Calcutta, really tired. Now, I had this idea, nobody had told me this, but I had this idea that once you come within about a mile of a real guru, you'll start to feel some bliss or something. Because I'd heard all these stories from Margis going to see Baba in jail or coming back to Australia and all these amazing stories. You were probably one of them. Did you see Baba in jail?
No.
Oh, okay, it wasn't you. There were others. So I'd heard all these stories and I was expecting something like that. So we caught the taxi to go to Baba's, to the office in Jodhpur Park in Calcutta. And when we got there, I saw that Baba's car was outside, this big old DeSoto he used to have. And it felt something wrong because Baba's car's right there. It means he's in the building. I'm just nearby, but I don't feel anything. I just feel tired. So this little doubt came in my mind. So we came into the building. We, took a shower. It was really hot, but kind of bathed and refreshed ourselves a bit. Came up to the Dhammachakra hall there, which is about 100 Margis there, singing kirtan, waiting for Baba to arrive. He was going to give his morning darshan, I think. And, I'd been so excited to see Baba for the first time, but now I just felt kind of bad. And I felt a bit depressed, which is not at all typical. Then there was this kind of disturbance in the back corner of the room, and some avadhuts came in. I'd never seen an avadhut before. In Australia, there were brahmacharis and brahmacharinis. I'd never seen an all-orange acharya. So these avadhuts came out, and then I saw Baba just in their midst, and my first thought seeing Baba was, wow, he's really short. and then I'm thinking, gosh, because he was 5'2", right? We know that. So he came and sat in the front, and I'm just sort of thinking, wow, is he really a real guru? I don't like the expression on his face. I thought he looked kind of grumpy. And then all this doubt's coming in my mind for no reason. It was just, I'm not sure. I have some, I think I had some idea later, but I'm thinking, is this all fake somehow? And suddenly I just felt like, what am I doing here? Maybe this whole thing of Ananda Marga and Baba being a real guru and everything is not true. And I've gone and bought a one-way ticket to India and proudly said goodbye to my family, like I'll see you later next lifetime, and maybe I'll be the number one idiot and my life is ruined. And I honestly, seeing Baba for the first time was one of the worst moments of my life, because I felt incredibly despairing and depressed. and worse than this, it actually is a lot worse, because prior to discovering spirituality and Ananda Marga, I was convinced that human beings were going to destroy the world through nuclear war in my lifetime. So now, Marga's not real. If Baba's not who I think he is, it's not just that my life is meaningless, but it's actually the end of the world. So, that's what I felt. Imagine, it's hard to describe how this black pit of despair. But you know what? This is very interesting that I'm having this conversation with you, because once when we were LFTs, you told me that on the spiritual path, we go through different tests, and according to the tantric tradition, we will doubt the guru 3 times. So that somehow, I remembered that. I was in this moment of despair, and I just remembered thinking, oh, he's testing you. There was just like a little voice in the back of my mind, and somehow that helped. So I just sitting there, all the Margis are so happy, they're all singing, Baba's giving his darshan, and everybody's super happy except me. And Baba was talking about the science of perception and how the mind interacts with the world through the senses and through the brain. And he was going into detail, and he said, when you look at somebody, and he spoke first in Bengali, then in Hindi, then in English. He said, when you look at somebody and the tanmatras, the vibration comes from that object that you see, or the person you see, and it comes to your eyes, and they pass that on into your brain through the optic nerves, and your brain interprets it, and it makes a connection. And when he said it in Bengali, he used the English word connection, and I just noticed because it was an English word, and I began paying attention because I wasn't really listening. Then he's translated himself into Hindi and used the word connection again. And now I was just a little bit curious. Then he says this whole thing in English, and when he said the word connection in English, he looked straight at me across the room, and a beam of blue light came from Baba's eyes and hit me in the heart chakra, and I felt my kundalini shoot up my spine, and suddenly I was in incredible ecstasy. And my whole body was full of energy, and I was in bliss, and I was crying, and everything was okay. and I really more than okay, and I really love Bawa. I thought this is the best thing in the world.
The world's not coming to an end after all.
The world's not coming to an end. My life has meaning. I'm not a total idiot. It's real.
Totally.
Okay, well, so then we stayed in Calcutta for DMC. Had some great experiences during that. I'll just tell you one, which I really loved. I got, of course, I'm in India for the first time. So what happened? I got sick. Stomach problem and everything. So by the time DMC came, a big crowd of Magis had arrived, and they kept extending this big pandal, huge tent in some big park in Calcutta. About 20,000 people were there, but it wasn't yet DMC, that's right. This was a couple of days before. So there were about 5,000 people had already arrived. Huge crowd. I was giving darshan really late at night. And I was really sick, and I'd sort of dragged myself to the darshan because I didn't want to miss it. I was sitting quite way near the back, very tired, not feeling well, super hot. And I was giving darshan. And I began to fall asleep. So I nodded off, and then I woke up, and I was very angry with myself for falling asleep while I was speaking. I thought, I shouldn't fall asleep while the guru is speaking. It's really bad. So then I tried to stay awake, but I was so tired and sick, and I fell asleep again. And this time I had a dream. And in the dream, everything was the same, except that Baba was speaking in English, and he wasn't speaking to the crowd, he was speaking to me. And he wasn't talking about philosophy or anything. He was saying, I'm really sorry for keeping you up so late. I know you're sick. I just have to talk to these people for a little while. Please forgive me for inconveniencing you. And so this is the dream, right? Then I woke up and Baba was speaking in English. And I'm a bit disoriented, right? I didn't really realize what's going on. And then I'm still tired, so I fell asleep again. And again, Baba was speaking to me in English in the dream. So when he's speaking to the crowd, he's speaking in Bengali, but when he's speaking to me, he switches to English in my dream. And again, he's apologizing. I'm really, I'm really sorry to make you come out in this big tent with all these people when you're not feeling well. I'm going to finish soon, so you can go home and go to sleep. So then I woke up and he's speaking in Bengali again. And this time I noticed this is weird. And that woke me up, and I stayed awake for the rest of the darshan. The other notable thing that happened before we went for Acharya training was, because we're trainees, we get priority as in the queue to get personal contact with Baba. So I got to see Baba alone for a little while. And I'm not going to go into detail because it's just me and Baba, but I will say that he taught me this thing, which he actually tells a lot of people, that you should forget your commissional and omissional sins. And I love this idea because I love this idea because it's very freeing. It's like, and he was saying, I'll take care of your sanskaras. You just do your best, stick with me, and you're fine. That he didn't say that like that's my version, but that's what I came away with. It was really
very sweet,
and of course it was very sweet. And you feel like, yeah, he's mine. I got the best dad. And we're on this journey together, so it was really nice. And then we went to Kathmandu
for Acharya training.
So there was just two of us.
Wow.
And our trainer was Dada Nabhaniilananda. I don't know, you may know him. Well, for the first part, he got transferred and we got another trainer. But it was a new training center, as far as I know. That's why there were just two of us, and it was just for overseas workers. Later on, some more came to join us. But for the first month or two, there were just the two of us. And after we'd been there for a little while, my buddy, we were sharing our room, we were together all the time, he decided to go home. Because he was having second thoughts. He thought, okay, I'm not supposed to be in Australia, I'm going to go home. Now, in those days, there was no internet or anything. It was hard enough to make an international phone call. So he was waiting for his ticket from his parents so he could go home to Australia. So now I'm staying in the room with the guy who wants to leave. And that kind of brought up some doubts in my mind again. So then I'm there and I'm sort of thinking, well, what am I doing here? and I was really confused, and I didn't know what to do, and it was getting, and I didn't want to talk to Dada Nabhaniilananda about it because he was, I don't know, he was kind of too senior to me, I was just really young. And then we used to get visitors sometimes in the training center. So one young, very new Acharya from the Philippines, I wish I could remember his name because he really helped me. He was just newly graduated. And I thought, oh, he's like me almost. I can talk to him. So I told him what was happening for me. And he said, I just finished my training, but during my training, he said, I also had my doubts. I was really confused. And so he said in his mind, he told Bawa, you have to give me a sign if you want me to be your Acharya, because I don't know, I'm really confused. And so he asked the trainer if he could go and do long sadhana in the cemetery. So he went there and did long sadhana, and Bawa gave him a sign, and he got inspired. So Bawa appeared to him as meditation, and he got, his sign, and he's super inspired, and now he's an Acharya. And I thought, and I'm thinking, I'm listening very closely, right? I'm thinking, maybe I should try that. So, but I did it a bit differently because I didn't feel like I had the right to demand anything from Bawa. So mine was phrased a little more, was a little more reticent. I said, well, Bawa, I kind of could really use some help right now, if you don't mind. Kind of, I wasn't making any ultimatums, but it was an appeal. So I asked my trainer if I could go and do sadhana. And I think Dada Nabhaniilananda is pretty intuitive. I'm pretty sure he knew that I was going through a lot of clash. And so which means what I didn't realize is that he's probably more worried than any of us. Because if both his only trainees leave the training center, he's going to be in so much trouble with Bawa. And I had no idea about that. But, looking back, he was probably really worried. So I went and I did sadhana at the Pashupati temple, which is there's a big river there, and there's a beautiful kind of area of wilderness above it. I found a beautiful spot amongst the trees. And I sat for sadhana and closed my eyes, and the world disappeared. And I went into a really deep meditation. And then suddenly I found myself seeing this kind of vision. And it was the apocalypse. I mean, I was seeing from the sky this city on the coast, and there was lightning. There was actually a thunder god raining down lightning bolts on the city, and the ocean was coming in, and the city was crumbling, and it was like, it symbolized some cataclysm in the future. And I just thought, oh my God, this, the future of the world is at stake here. It was really, really pretty daunting and frightening. And then suddenly I was alone in the room with Bawa. And he was younger. He was like in the younger gentleman photos that he was much younger. And he was sitting in a chair, which he doesn't normally do. And he said to me, your duty is to find those people who will lead humanity through what is to come. And he told me something else, which I will never tell anyone, but it was really inspiring. And
you just tell me, I don't tell anyone.
Yeah, you think. And I had my sign. And so I I was fine. I came out, everything was clear. I went back to the training center. I'm sure that as soon as he saw my face, Kashishwananda knew everything was okay with me. Then I'm there with my buddy Nityapriya, and after a few days, he decided he's going to stay and be an acharya after all. And there's another part to that story, which I guess I tell you that years later. I've been acharya many years. I was in Europe, and we used to go to Sweden Training Center for festivals where they'd have like 5 days of kirtan and all the trainees. And there were a lot of trainees, like 20 trainees at least, maybe 30. And there was one brother there whom I knew very well from when he was an LFT in Australia and New Zealand, and he was there as a trainee. So this kirtan's going on, this good, wonderful vibration. It was in May. It was Baba's birthday time. This must have been around about 1995. And this brother came to me and said, Dada, can I talk to you? I said, sure, let's go for a walk. And he said, Dada, I'm not sure if I should become an acharya. I'm having doubts. It's the same story. It's like a relay race. You got the Filipino Dada, and then me. Now it's his turn. And so he told me he's having all kind of doubt. And so I told him the story. And I said, well, maybe you should try it, something like that. And he said, oh, yeah, great, So he went and did sadhana by the lake. There's a beautiful lake there in Sweden near the training center. And he told me this later. I didn't get his story until much later, because I went back to London or somewhere. What happened was he went down to the lake and he did long sadhana. And he was one of these people who can do really long meditation. He sat for a long time and nothing happened. And he's really clashed. And he's thinking, oh no, Baba doesn't want me. And he was super sad, And he came back to the training center thinking, that's it. This is not for me. And Baba it's just not, I'm not supposed to do this. He came back to the training center, and there was kirtan had been going on for a few days, and there's this big Baba photo, like 5-6 foot tall, at the front of the room. A lot of people doing kirtan. He walked into the room, and he saw Baba's photo, and a beam of light came from Baba's photo, and he went in samadhi. And then he was okay. He became an acharya as well. So that's I don't know if that's continued, but that's all I know from that chain of events.
You want to say his name?
Pardon?
You want to say his name?
Oh yeah, sure. So Chandranathananda.
Okay.
He's from New Zealand.
Okay. So you became an acharya. You've had quite a few different postings and positions in that time. I think you were had a global position for a while, didn't you? Prachar or something?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a neat posting. I was first posted as RS Melbourne. Well, actually, I was posted for 3 weeks to school in Bardwan in Bengal, but it was really just to get me out of the way while they were waiting for my ticket to come from Australia. They just wanted to get me out of the office. So that was something, but that was not very meaningful, because I think I was one of the only people in the entire city of 1 million people who spoke English. So I didn't have a lot to do. Luckily, I had my guitar with me. But I was posted to Australia as Regional Secretary of Melbourne. And then 2 years later, Divya Lokeshananda came. He got that posting, and I became sectorial HPMG secretary. So as my so-called friends call it, the song and dance department. So I by this time I had I felt like it was a bit of a mandate to get back into music, and play some more, get more into singing and performing. So anyway, though it wasn't really rawa. So that was my posting for the next, let me see, 79, I was posted, end of 79. So really 1980, first 2 years I was RS, then I was sectorial HPMG for 10 more years. Then 1992 I was posted to Europe as MSA, so it's all SDM department. I was there for another 10 years. Then I was given this global posting you mentioned as Global Dharma Prachar Coordinator. So it was a posting that was kind of invented by Dharma Vednanji helped to make this up, I think. But Tidananji kind of implemented it. And I had that posting only for less than a year. And then they gave me, on top of that, they made me acting SS Suva. That was when we spent some more time together. And then that was temporary while they waited for the visa of Dada. What's his name? Begins with A. He was the posted SS, and he came there. So then I was posted to Cairo sector, and I was there for 4 years. And then New York sector, sectorial DPS, last 13 years.
Right. And so, of course, and during that time, you really got into your music, your kirtan and devotional songs. And you've made quite a few albums, I understand, as well. And you're very well known as, you call yourself the Dude Acharya or something. What is it? Dude Dada.
The monk dude. So, according to, who was it? Andy Warhol, the famous artist, everybody gets 15 minutes of fame. So even though as a avadut we renounce name and fame and all that, Baba figured I had a little bit of a taste for it still, so he gave me 15 minutes of fame, and especially in Brazil where we had this concert at the Earth Summit in 1992,
Yes, Kamala.
and it was fantastic. Yeah, oh, yeah, that's right. Kamala was on stage with me. She was singing. We had this band we put together with Kamala was singing vocals with me, and then we had this Brazilian backing band. We played to a lot of people, I think more than 5,000 people. And then in the morning, the next day, we had 10,000 people there doing kirtan. It was really a wonderful experience. But I remember thinking about that at the time. And once you're done that, everybody at this big conference sort of knows you or wants their photo with you, and it's sort of like this a little bit weird because you're slightly famous, and it was no big deal. It wasn't. I didn't actually like it that much, and I thought, okay, Baba, that was interesting, but I think I'd rather. It wasn't like I was considering anything else, but it was just like it was showing me what it's like, and it's no big deal. It's not worth worrying about much. But I enjoyed the music, and I really like being able to help people feel something of what I feel about spirituality and the spiritual path and the idea of Sadvipra Samaj and all these incredible, uplifting, visionary ideas that Baba gave us, and express that or communicate that through my music.
Right, and you've certainly done that and inspired a lot of people. And you also not only known for your music, but also Prachar, which I think you combine the two together. Often you use your music as a form of Prachar.
For sure. I always include, I mean, there was a period when I was doing a lot of concerts, especially in Australia. I did quite a few. And I remember one concert we played in Cairns. I was with Dada Parananda, and with this tour up there, doing different retreats and festivals and things. And one sister told me she came to my concert there, and she ended up becoming a Didi. Her name's Didi Ananda Nirmala. So, and it's sort of, I thought, okay, I wasn't just playing some rock and roll. I had some better reason for this. So yeah, it's music's a form of communication, and you can communicate feelings really effectively, especially through kirtan, of course, and Prabhat Sangeet or devotional songs. It's an old spiritual tradition. So I was just learning that this is what music's kind of really about. It's inspiration. It's not about anybody being famous or whatever.
Did you ever have any problems with wearing your uniform doing Prachar, or did you use that as a focal point to inspire people?
It's interesting. I was once when I was in Australia. I was invited to sing a very big concert for 2,000 people at a what they call I think it was called the Rock Mass. It was in Adelaide. There was some sort of preacher who was kind of kind of hip guy, and he had this big following. And I was invited to sing there, but the condition was that I don't wear my uniform.
Right.
So I turned it down. So because I thought the purpose of my music is to project an Ananda Marga ideology. If I can't be who I really am, there's no point.
Yeah.
So I turned down, and I've turned down another big opportunity I had when I was in Europe for a similar kind of reason. So I don't see that as an obstacle. I just think I mean, this is what I want to do. It's my choice. I don't want to be used by somebody else to project what they want to project. I want to project what Ba wants me to project.
Right. And you've never had any problems with people not getting initiated because you're wearing your turban.
Well, it can be an obstacle because people. So I'll give you an example here. So this is a very different phase of my life now in California. I'm doing a lot of prachar with companies and businesses and in Silicon Valley in where I live, and I've lost opportunities, you could say, or opportunities haven't come through because people think it's something religious, and that's part of that is the uniform. But on the other hand, they know that I'm a monk. I'm wearing this uniform. From that, they know that I'm a monk, which means they know that I'm an expert. This is like something I've dedicated my life to. So, on the one side, they take me more seriously and see me as somebody with real authority. On the other side, some people feel threatened because they think it's something religious. So there's pluses and minuses. But anyway, for me. It's not an option. I'm not interested in. I did once give a talk when I wasn't in uniform, and ironically enough, that was one of the very few times that I've actually been challenged about this being some sort of religious cult. Was when I was not wearing my uniform, and that was I was in Ireland, and there'd just been some sort of mass suicide. I think it was Jonestown or something, and there was a lot of sensitivity around. You might remember that awful thing, right?
Yeah.
So I was in Ireland, and I had a lot of people at this lecture, about 80 people in Cork, and I'd chosen not to wear uniform. It was kind of an experiment. And at the end of or in the middle of the talk, one guy starts asking these questions. He says, "Oh, are you trying to brainwash people? Where do you get your money?" And like really aggressive questions. And I'm being super polite because I'm in front of 80 people, right? And I've got to be cool because I'm supposed to be a cool meditation teacher. But I was wishing the guy was gone, right? But then this lady in the audience, she turns on him and says, "Why don't you shut up? We came here to listen to Dada, not to listen to you." And so Baba took care of him nicely, and everything went on, and that lady got initiated, and she's fantastic. So after that, I don't think I've ever done anything out of uniform since then.
Did you find not wearing your turban made any difference?
It's hard to tell. Yeah, I'm unclear about it. I mean, I'll tell you a funny story. I was not. I can't remember whether I was wearing turban or not. But I attended a conference in San Francisco Bay area. There was a few hundred people there. I was just in the audience. I wasn't speaking there or anything. So this guy was up there. It was called conscious capitalism. So it was about trying to bring some more sort of human values into capitalism, something. The guy speaking was, he was the head of a big company, and he was talking about values. And I was sitting in the front row. There was quite a few hundred people there, but he saw me, and he mentioned that meditation is really helpful for to help employees manage stress and all of that. And then he said, well, he apologized to me because he doesn't meditate regularly. I don't know the guy. I'm just sitting in the front row. And I'm thinking, I thought this was pretty hilarious, the poor guy, he's up there and he's feeling bad because there's a monk in the front row and he's not meditating every day, so it made him feel something. I thought that was fairly entertaining. I think all CEOs should have to apologize to a monk if they don't meditate twice a day. Yeah, I think it's a good rule.
So what are your plans? That's very funny. What are your plans now for the future? Do you have any albums in line or any sort of project?
Well, yeah, definitely. For sure. Well, there's two or three. Well, I also write books, so I've written this Close Your Eyes and Open Your Mind. It's been very useful as a prachar tool for a lot of people. Um, and that actually got me an invitation to Vietnam because it's translated into Vietnamese.
Right.
So the Vietnamese Margies want me to be there because they all read my book, and I'm in Vietnam next year. So I'm going next year or the year after. I'm sort of planning it now. I think we can do it next year. I'm going to produce another album of songs, because I've got a bunch of songs that I haven't recorded I've written over the last few years. I'm very happy with them. I think they're probably the best songs I've done if you average it out. And we want to record a kirtan album at the same time, with the same musicians. So I'm sort of thinking of a kind of classic rock kirtan album. Do you think am I going to go to hell, or you think it's okay?
Depends on your lyrics.
The lyrics, yeah, right, very good. So that, and then I wrote a novel. I have a sensible book, which I mentioned. And I also have a silly book, which is, playing out another childhood sanskara. I always wanted to write a fantasy novel, because J.R.R. Tolkien was kind of wasn't my guru, but Lord of the Rings was my religion when I was a kid. It was like I took a lot of my moral, cues from Gandalf and, these iconic characters. So I wanted to write a fantasy novel, but I didn't want to write a pale imitation of Tolkien, which is what many fantasy novels are. So I thought, I don't know how to do this. But then at some point I discovered that I could write comedy. And so I wrote a comedy fantasy novel, because one thing about Lord of the Rings is it's the greatest fantasy novel in history thus far, but it's not funny. So I thought, okay, I can do something different. So I'm not going to no one's going to think I'm trying to imitate Tolkien. So I wrote the first book, and I think I'll publish the second book next year. So that's coming. But perhaps more useful, is a prachar program that it's built on, a lot of other experiences, but we're creating a curriculum, really like a whole teacher's guidebook and a training program for people to teach at universities, teach Ananda Marga practices and philosophy at universities. And we're already doing it. We're doing it in Mexico. We have 20 teachers that we're training, and we're going to roll this out in 10 universities in Mexico in January. And we'll come out of that with a complete sort of tested system for teaching universities, and it might be something we'd like to make it available in some form to other sectors and countries.
Very good, Dada. Well, thank you for sharing your experiences. They're very inspiring and humorous at times.
It's been fun. I mean, my life's been fun, but talking to you's been fun as well.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. Nice project.
Filling all my life with meaning. I thought that you were far away from me, but tonight I feel no distance. I see you standing in the clear sky as I touch you to reach on high. Won't you let my heart stay still? A sweetness in the near distance. Words I thought to utter now lie still, and in my mind just thoughts of you.